Welcome everybody to Time for Life. We have a special guest today, which I'm pretty excited about. A so-so could not. So-so is on vacation. She is enjoying the water, sunshine, and all the good things in life too with her family. But first off, I want to say happy Disability Pride, and to all that are celebrating this month, and and also happy Canada Day to our emotional support Canadians who always give us so much love.
I have Canadian citizenship too, so I'm both a
Uh,
lesbian and a Canadian.
Perfect. so
Oh, and
so you
slightly
get to.
disabled at this point, so I cover
Oh,
everything.
all right. So do we. So welcome you and Holly. I'm so excited. It's Holly Valero, correct?
Right? Yep.
Please tell me about you and your art.
Well, I've been drawing all my life, and as a child, I grew up in Pennsylvania. We were born in Miami, Florida, in the early '60s, and by the time I was a small child, I think my parents were concerned that we were going to become like too cool or urbane, so they shipped us off to this rattle trap poor farm in the middle of nowhere. With the next,
Oh, wow.
basically raising sheep and chickens and baling hay. It was kind of like a picture of Green Acres and an extended version of Black Mirror. and,
I love that.
and it was, farming is very hard work, but it was my first
I
book
love it.
series. The Mouse and
It
Elephant
is.
books are based on the map basically of the farm with the pond and the gardens and everything. But as a kid, I used to love to draw, and I always used to ask for art supplies for birthdays and Christmas and stuff. But because we were so poor and because paper cost money, I would get like a pad of paper for my birthday, and I was just like so, riddled with anxiety at destroying this very limited precious resource that it was kind of crippling to
Oh.
my artwork. So I always like had my best work when I would draw on the back of like an electric bill or a menu at a restaurant or a placemat. And so it kind of kept me from drawing in any kind of professional sense for years. And I grew up, I became a disc jockey for a few years, and went into like marketing and then publishing and programming and web design. And I kept drawing over the years, but I kept trying to find a good medium for me to work in. And because I had
Mm-hmm.
a bit of chronic tendon pain, it was difficult to draw physically because I had elbow pain. And
Really?
so what I did ultimately was I got an iPad Pro. And after many other tablets and trying different things, it was
Mm-hmm.
the it was kind of like the iPad Pro that changed my life. And
Oh
so,
my goodness.
so as a result, with its magnificent undo command and its limitless resources, I sit in my recliner and I have a nice comfy blanket that I bunch up and make into kind of a desk so I can get the angle right. And often draw with like an icy wrap on my elbow, and that's how I draw. So I started.
Mm-hmm.
I said when I was 60, I was like, if you're gonna do this thing before you die, then it's time to get a move on because you're. So I decided
Yeah.
to start a book series to see if I could, and I started to publish my mom's books, and
Oh my
and
God.
so I and the rest is kind of history. So, it's so fun, and I
It's
so
amazing.
love it. So it is like such a joy to draw
Mm-hmm.
and to just I was like like all artists, it's like, oh my God, you suck, and just like I'm like,
There's
keep
there's
at it.
so much whimsy and fun in your work, which I was really drawn to because the characters are just so adorable. They're just they're just so freaking adorable. And so I'm like, oh my God. The cats, I love the cats. So what was your first character that you drew?
The first thing I drew was probably, I was testing brushes in Procreate and downloading brushes everywhere, and I wasn't finding anything I liked. And I never really felt all that secure about my
Mm.
brushes by this guy who I later on sent like a fangirl note to, and the first thing I drew was a fox. I drew an orange fox with this brush, and it was kind of a loose, sketchy brush. And
Mhm.
I was like, my God, this is it. This is the brush I've been looking for. And so I started with the fox, and then I did, some other stuff. And I have a little stack in Procreate, which I, absolutely adore, called my junk drawer. And in it, I've got like all my daily drawings that I do and that I've kept. But I think this guy, believe it or not, and you can see the difference from, say, 4 years ago. This was
Oh
the
my
first guy
goodness.
I drew testing out the brush. And, you know, and from
That's
there,
adorable.
I started drawing, you know, more foxes. And
Oh my God.
and then I started drawing an elephant because I like elephants and
Mhm,
mice.
mhm,
And I came up with the mouse and elephant idea. But I love animals. I'm a lifelong animal lover. My brother's an
mhm.
animal lover, um, and I love, my big thing in life has always been that, like we call them foxes, but we don't know what they call each other, right? We have
Right.
we overlay our assumptions and our taxonomy, and when we tell stories about animals, we almost always tell them from our perspective. Like, this is my cat or my dog, and this is, my story of them, but kind of as it relates to me. And I wanted to tell stories of animals as if we were just kind of following them and watching them from a distance, and that's what I like.
Mhm.
So the the book I wrote called Wander is uh, not only about just a bear from waking from hibernation and following this bear for a year until he gets to the return to hibernation, but I actually wrote the language.
No.
So it's written in the language of the bear, and there's a glossary at the end of it so
Oh
that you
my
can
goodness.
see if you can figure out the language as you're reading it. And if you can't figure it out, you can look up the meaning in the book. And so it took me about 3 months. I studied a variety of different indigenous languages and native languages, and like Egyptian hieroglyphics, and basically came up with the idea of this. The book starts as a print version, and there's an animated iPad version that has the language tooltips built in. But it's the story of a bear, and you'll see, like, on the side,
Mm,
there
so
are
cute.
glyphs for the
Oh,
language. And
oh,
so
that's amazing.
you read the story by reading and interpreting the glyphs from the bottom up, because it's,
I love that.
all animals are grounded, so they live on the ground. Um, I have another one of these books that'll be coming out probably sometime next year, and it's a similar book, but it's a different language. So it's a book about a beaver who is looking for meaning in life, and the beavers have their own language. So it's like these
Oh
are
my.
these are so much fun to produce.
How
Uh,
did you come up with the language for your animals?
Well, the bear language, I put a lot of thought into this. I'm like, it should be something that's kind of like a very, like a grotesque brush stroke, that you would make with your paws,
Yeah.
and kind of simplified strokes, because they have larger paws and they don't have the dexterity of, say, beavers, who have quite a bit of dexterity. So all of the bear um, glyphs are kind of like based in either circles or slashes, you know,
Hmm.
hard pressed prints, that kind of thing. And the beavers, for instance, have more grayscale and and more like, and of course, depending on the creature, like beavers have tons of different words for water: running water, still water, deep water, rough water, waterfalls. And bears have different words for fish, like fish, favorite fish, that kind of thing. So the idea is to kind of tell the story as if people were just standing back and watching it unfold, but not
Right.
trying to intrude into the life of the creatures that I draw. Because like, I live on 3 acres of land, and I'm trying to turn it into
Mm.
like my own little Audubon society here,
Oh,
so that
wow.
when the day comes and I'm no longer here to fill the feeder, I want there to be enough fruiting trees and shrubs and natural berries and
Hmm.
sunflowers growing, so that the wildlife can sustain itself without me. But
Right.
I love bird watching and I love critter watching, but I don't want to intrude, right? Because I mean,
Right.
let's face
Right.
it, if you're a deer outside and you're like, there's this woman and she's looking at me from the deck, and like, get a life, lady. So, I kind of
we
like to leave the place native for them, you know.
So and I, my co-host Soso, we have just a passion for animals. And we're both fortunate enough to be in areas where we see an awful lot of animals. She sees more, I think she's seen a fox now,
Uh-huh. Where are you?
and I'm in the Washington State area,
Oh,
and
wow.
So is in Quebec.
Wow.
And so
Oh, that's great.
the yeah, so we're swapping pictures on a daily with another friend of ours of just the wild animals that show up on cameras, or ones that we caught. And in fact, I do on Chronically Illing Out, I do a Monday meditation, and the next one's gonna be with a bunch of wild critters. So yes,
Oh,
I share your
nice.
passion
Oh, yeah.
for
When
animals.
we first moved here, we had like 50 wild turkeys one year. And I was like, my God, that is an ungodly amount of turkeys. And they were everywhere, and they nest in the trees. I had no idea, but they nested.
Really?
Yeah, like, so in the afternoons, we'd be having a glass of wine
I
on the
did not
deck,
know this.
and like 50 turkeys would come in, kind of like you know, like the Air Force,
Wow.
and make their way into the oak trees in our back 40, and just nest there and be like, wow. I was clueless, I had no idea. But we have a neighborhood fox who visits my feeder. One year I had a bunch of wild blueberries that were going past their prime, so I popped them out at the feeder, figuring the birds would love them.
Of
And
course.
I found a small fox sitting there, just scooping up mouthfuls of them, and just looking like, oh my God, so delicious. And like, and you don't have to pick them one by one. There's just like a whole little pile of them here.
Oh
He
my
looks
god.
so happy. I was just like,
I know, I am I moved into an apartment a few months ago where at my house I had a wild squirrel that I fell in love with, and I had named him and everything, and I thought, gosh, how am I gonna, how am I gonna function without a squirrel, right?
yeah.
And when I came here to the apartment, squirrels everywhere.
Oh yeah.
And it was like one ran up the tree and just stared. And it's like, "Welcome." It
Yeah.
was just awesome. I just love animals. I particularly am fond of crows and ravens. I love them.
Well, I have a book for
I
you. It's called Counting Crows. It's a mouse and elephant book. So
Oh, please share.
I did a numbers book. There's 6 in the series to begin with, and then I did one called M is for Mouse, and which is letters, and then I
Oh,
did one called Counting Crows, which is a story about basically, mouse and elephant live on a farm with chickens, as we did, and
mm.
I don't know if you can see this in the light. There you go.
Oh, look at that. That's adorable. Oh my gosh, I see the crow.
So the shows and asks to help count the chickens in the spring. And of course, the chickens go bananas because a fox is
Right.
there and take off.
And what is the
So
age for
it's between like 1 and 5, 1 and 6. The storylines are aged for that. But like, there's the crows, um, you know. So the crows basically go out and try to gather all the chickens back and bring them to the farm and count them as they go. But of course, they have.
Are you still there?
The
Oh,
stories
there
are
you are.
So the stories are like, can you help the crows, find like 9 chickens in this bramble field. So it's a little counting book for kids. And
Mhm.
um,
I think that's amazing.
so it's a walk across our farm with a bunch of chickens. But that's the crows are in that book. But basically they're all the animals that were, kind of native in the area, with the exception, of course, of the elephant, because we did.
And that's where you got your inspiration, right?
So that's where I got
You
my
you just
inspiration.
inspired by that, and then this language you came up with, that's amazing. And so they're positive messages. I would love what it was your first book?
That I started with was called Pumpkin Patch, and that was
The
the first
pumpkin patch.
the mouse and elephant book where, because elephants love pumpkins, and
Mhm.
they mouse and elephant end up planting pumpkins and all of that. So they're I call them gentle adventures for like little kids. So they're little stories, about sustainability and friendship and when you and there was a middle class, and for
Mhm.
most of us, our lives were enough. It
Mhm.
was enough.
Yeah.
You, every Pennsylvania was poor. There are no rich dairy farmers, and
Right,
but because of that, nobody felt poor. I mean, I asked my brother, I'm like, were we
right.
poor or were we middle class? And he just laughed. He's like, we're poor. He's like, you got your bike at the dump. I'm like, yeah, but so did every other area. That's Walmart of our time. And I said, we've just gotten to this point where like everything is too expensive and everything is so fraught. And I'm like,
Everything.
and the assumption that you cannot just live a simple life. And I'm like, I'm here to tell you quietly in my little, lesbian shire in Maine that this little simple life is like the best thing on earth. It's
I don't know, I think Lesbian Shire was the best thing I've heard right now.
like, I'm gonna get a tattoo that says like Hobbit life, like
I love
meet
it.
me,
Yeah.
meet me at the strawberry patch. And, but it's like this is the way, it's
Yeah.
to live simply, to be able to look outside and see the weather change all the time because it's Maine. We live in a house with a ton of
Mm.
windows, and so our living area has got like wraparound windows on 3 sides, and when it
Mm.
snows in the wintertime, it's breathtaking. You're just like sitting in the middle of a
Oh, I
snowstorm.
love that.
And one
Mhm.
time when the kids came for Christmas, we had gotten them home from the airport. It was snowing like mad. And a 6-point buck strolled out of our little forest and just
Oh.
stood in the backyard looking at us
Oh.
like some kind of Courier and Ives print. And I was like, I would not trade this for the world. I wouldn't trade this for the city. I wouldn't trade it for like the biggest, most expensive, fanciest car still is used to take you to your local grocery store. People who are in
Yeah.
Hummers and God knows what, they are going to the same exact places I am and driving on the same exact roads I am. You can have like, I'm way too much of a lesbian to have multiple houses, but there are people who have, I can barely handle one, I'm like, we have to get out of this sense that like, our world is some kind of some kind of decoration, right? Like it's a shame to drive animals extinct because I'd like to see them. Well, they'd like to
Mhm.
see them too, like
Yeah.
we don't have that right to just trash everything, and we should not be
Thank you. Thank you.
desperately trying to like make money to the point that I heard the other day two news items back to back. One was that 100 million Americans were under life-threatening heat,
Yeah.
and the other
Yeah,
one, the
they
stock
are. Yeah.
market had hit a new high, and I'm like,
Mhm.
what do these things
Yeah.
have in common? You know, I'm like, let's like at some point, all the money in the world is just an exercise, and I guess how much money you can make, but it's not going to keep you from getting COVID. Like you can be the richest person on earth and you can still fall down a flight of stairs. There's
Oh. Oh,
nothing
hell yeah.
there's nothing intrinsically wonderful about money that will protect you from anything real, you know? And I'm like, just we have to like renormalize the idea of having an actual life, having a good life, taking
Mhm.
care of our planet, taking care of our animals, taking care of the people we love, and just staying the heck out of
Mhm.
everyone else's business, just
Right.
like,
Right. I agree so much because I just had the bottom drop out on my life. So this has been actually it went from a oh my gosh to a wow, this is fantastic experience.
it can be freeing, yes.
Um paring down the things that I want to do. I had to leave disability, filed in February. And so it was like, all right, where do I go from here?
Yeah,
So but it shouldn't be a struggle for anyone.
right.
It should not be a struggle. And so yeah, it's about making a difference and you're making a difference.
We have kind of this feeling that like, if it's hard, and you're trying to like say you're disabled. I don't care if you could take every disabled person in America and add another 10 or 20% of the people just for the heck of it, and it would still be less expensive to subsidize than say a couple of fighter jets. Like our
Right.
I'm like,
Right.
I said people want to be useful and they want to be liked. They want to be respected. And I
People
said,
want to be loved.
yeah, and I'm like, the reason why we're on this planet, as far as I'm concerned, is to show each other respect. Respect creativity, respect
Yes.
individuality, respect difference, respect process, and simply, you know, you can joyously pursue whatever you want to pursue, and it doesn't mean that anybody else gets less. When I was 27, I went on vacation, and the second day I was there, I went into a coma and died, and had
Wow.
an incredible near-death experience that I have probably thought of every day since, and it has completely, reformed and reevaluated my life, and and I
Mm.
and I it was such an educational and wonderful experience. Hard bar of entry to get the course, but you do have to die. But you know, and what's that?
That's amazing.
So
Do you mind sharing?
oh, how I died? It was just well, I had went into like a had several massive seizures, went into
Mm.
a coma. At the time I was visiting my then partner's parents in a retirement village in Florida, and scared the daylights out of a pile of old people because the ambulance doesn't normally arrive with the lights on and the horns going.
Oh, geez. Oh, geez.
So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
took me to the hospital, and put me in restraints, and I broke my way out. They put me in heavier restraints, and I broke my way out. They put me in these like psychopathic, like a 4-point restraint with chains at my wrists and ankles in a hospital bed. And then they told
Mhm.
everyone that I was probably going to die, and that to like prepare yourselves for that. And then if I
Oh,
lived, I might
Holly.
be And if I lived, I might someday be able to get a job like sorting sponges at the sponge factory, you
Oh,
know.
Jesus. Oh,
But,
no.
you know, after about 4 days, uh, I came back, and I came back of my own choice. I was off having an incredible experience talking to these people, and they were, you know, an incredible, incredible experience about our lives and how we live. And, you know, and I was talking, it would look like the gymnasium of my old junior high of all things with the bleachers in. And, and they were saying like, you know, well, in some cases, you know, you went back and in others you didn't. And, you know, it's sort of like things went on. And I'm like, what do you mean went back? I'm like, I'm here. Like, I'm here now. Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, yes, of course, you know, you're here now ish, you know, but like
Wow.
in some cases you returned, but you know, in most cases you didn't. And I'm like,
Wow.
what do you mean? And
Wow.
you know, and so I was like, it was like going back and forth. I was walking around the hospital, you know, I was sitting up by the TV at one point in the room looking at the older Southern woman in the bed next to me, and walking around the hallway, seeing my partner at the time, reading the newspaper, which was something she would have done, and and
Mhm.
talking to various doctors who I found out later on that didn't exist, watching myself from the perspective of being behind the bed, you know, watching me in bed. It was very surreal. And
Mm.
and ultimately, you know, I started getting worried because they kept saying, yes, well, you know, you didn't go back. And I said, well,
Mm.
I started getting like, uh-oh, wait a minute. I've seen enough sci-fi to know that this is not good. And
Oh my gosh.
and I told him, I said, you know, I had no intention of dying at this age. And they said, well, nobody, you know, intends to die at 80. I'm like, no, I'm like, no, 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 no. I said, no, I have,
Wow.
and I said, I had no intention of leaving, you know, my partner feeling bad, like maybe she should have done something, or maybe, you know, she was responsible. I said, no, no, no. And I said, look,
Mm.
I said, I'm not doing this. I'm going back. And I said, I can die like that. I can do it again like that. It's so simple. And they're like, yes, 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 of course. And I finally said, I said, I don't think you realize. I said, I'm going to do everything in my power to stop you. And at that point, boom, I was dropping at like a million miles an hour through what felt like the funnel of a tornado. And I hit the
Wow.
hospital bed so hard that I felt like the springs go like groink. And I woke up
Wow.
and I was in 4-point restraint. And I was looking at
Mm.
myself and I'm like, oh my God, did I kill somebody? Like, why am I
Right.
chained to this hospital bed? And and uh and then, you know, the doctor came in and yelled at me for not being on seizure medication. And this was
Oh,
back before they had much of a bedside manner. And
I think they still struggle. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, true.
True.
And you know, and slowly, you know, I got better, but I was a hot mess for a while. I had like black eyes and, you know, all sorts of like injuries and a scar and this, that, and the other. Um, and it took about a year, you know, to kind of get myself back together. And I did lose a small chunk of
Mm.
the 1980s that never really came back. But, you know, as I tell people, it was the 80s. It's probably probably best just left there, you know, with all the, you know, with all the
And
sins and tears.
when you came back, what was that feeling? I mean,
At
of like what just happened, or, was there something that you felt different about?
I think at first, you know, after when you realize what happened, you know, you tend to, you know, you know, first of all, you're terrified because like, oh my God, because the doctors were
Right,
like, we don't
right.
know what happened to you, and it may never happen again, or it could happen again tomorrow and kill you. We don't know. And you know, I had
Mhm.
MRIs and all of that, and they're like, you're not really epileptic. Um, the only thing they found, which was really interesting, is that my brain waves my brain functions on different brain waves than most people do, which I thought was fascinating. So, you're
Interesting.
right. When you're awake, your brain is alpha beta waves, which are associated with like kind of daily reality. And as you get older, you function more on delta waves, which are like long-term memory. And when you dream, your brain waves are predominantly theta, which are responsible for dreaming. And they said
Mhm.
that when I am awake, my theta waves are stronger. And when I am dreaming, I double dip. I double down on theta waves.
That's
So,
fascinating.
yeah, I was like, that's really interesting. It explains why I have very vivid dreams. And it also explains why I'm terrible at, following like road directions and need a GPS because, that's a little too hardcore reality for my liking. But yeah, so at first it was terrifying, and you go around and you're like, oh, please take my watch, and giving away everything to friends. And after about 6 months, you're like, give me my watch back. And then you kind of go on after that. But I think the things that I bring back that I tell people about, which are the things to take with them, is that first of all, we as a species are kind of doing everything ass backwards. We are playing with the
Yeah.
box that life came in. And that should be
Yeah.
infinitely obvious to anyone with more than half a brain. But it was
If
nice.
you're breathing, you should
Yeah.
know this.
But it's nice to hear that validated. And
Mhm. Mhm.
the second
It is.
thing, because at one point I was just like, you know, uh, when I died, I always thought it would be a very solo and singular experience
Mm.
because I'm such an introvert, and I pictured myself, walking around, a dark, empty room, like, I have a ticket here and it says 75. I don't know where I'm supposed to be, 75. But when I died, there were just billions of people around me. And it was
Wow.
the most positive and uplifting experience. And the only way I ever described it was to say, like, if you were at the Olympics
Mm.
and you were
Wow.
running for a gold medal in something and you won and you got that gold medal and you stood up and everybody cheered. I said, that's what it felt like. It was
Wow.
so vast and so positive. I said, I am too small to take this in. I will come apart, because it's just too much, I'm like,
Wow.
I don't have
Wow.
the wattage to contain the light that's coming into this bulb. Um, and so people worry their entire lives, like, am I doing the right thing at the right time? Did I, hopelessly screw up the last, I don't know, 20, 30 years? Could I go back and make like a ton of changes because I've got like more knowledge now? And the best thing I learned was that everything you do when you do it was the right thing to do at that time.
Yes.
That's what you did was right. You never did the wrong thing. You actually did the right thing for you. And part of the right thing for you is maybe learning that you would do it better the next time. But there's never any ability, which is kind of esoteric, but there's no ability to go back and redo a moment. You have to go through
Right.
the first time. And so,
Mhm.
for all of those times we've run with scissors or, walked up to some poor woman and said, oh my God, what do you do? And they say, I'm not pregnant. You're like, kill me.
Right,
All of those moments have to happen.
Mhm.
And so, you know, obviously when you know better, do better, but you have to grant yourself a little grace on these things and assume that the choices you made were the right choices.
Yeah,
They were
you have to.
always the right choices. They may have
Mhm.
been bad choices at the time, but they were the correct choice for you at that moment. And I
I
thought that
believe
was
that.
that made me feel better because I was like, I'm certainly looking back at my life, there are infinite choices I made that, thank God there was no social media back then because, I
Yeah.
I will
Yeah.
take those to the grave with me and, I'd rather not have to review them. But,
Yeah. There's some things I don't wanna review. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I
For
mean,
sure.
just like, you just find yourself going, oh, I hope people either A, forgot, or, B, were able to just say something like, well, she was an idiot. And I'm like, yes, 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 I was an idiot. So,
did you bring that feeling into your writing or your
oh gosh, yes. Oh gosh, yes.
illustration?
Oh yeah. Everything, I can't help but see the humor in everything. And I think it's just, the ability to laugh, is
Mm.
is the most important survival skill out there.
It is. It's the only one I had growing up.
Yeah, it's the only one I had too. Janet and I, my partner, have been together for 30, coming up on 34 years. And
That's beautiful.
and I tell people, it's like, find someone who makes you laugh, and find someone that you make laugh, because life is not like The Bachelor. I've been in
Right.
a limousine, I think twice, and once was for a funeral, so it wasn't really a party, but I have like literally spent, thousands of hours in the plumbing aisle of Home Depot, and throughout my life, usually with something in my hand going, I need something that looks like this, but one obviously that's not broken into, so. And that's the kind of stuff, if you can laugh with your partner when things go wrong,
Yes.
then you can stay together. And honestly, when you die, you're not going to look back and say, thank God I invested wisely in AI stocks and Bitcoin. No, when you die, you're going to say things like, remember that French dip we had in San Francisco? My God, that was good.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Say that cat, oh my God, serious, how I loved him. I could not have loved a cat more. And those are the things you take with you, because you're not taking your money and you're not taking your stuff. So, when you die, you take
No.
your humor, you take your brains, you take your personality, all the things that make you are still there. You just don't have that 401k, but you don't need it. That's the good part.
It's not going to need it.
Finally.
Now
And you
I'm
stop
wondering what we're going to
contributing
need now.
to
I think
it.
that's some, thinking of passing over and what that looks like is just, to me, I have to believe there's more.
Oh God, yes.
I have to believe, because I've had some lessons here. I've had some lessons. So I have to believe I'm here for lessons.
People tell me things like, I'll believe in life after death when I meet somebody who's died and come back. And I'm like, today is your lucky day, because I
Here we
have
are,
died
right?
and I've come back. And they're like, I don't believe you. And I'm like, well, okay, I get it. You don't have to believe me. I mean, obviously, I don't care what you believe. But I'm like, let me ask this. And this is, again, I would love it if someone explained this to me, like I'm 5 years old, but like, why is it that people assume that your options are the white man's version of Jesus, or whatever, your particular God is, or absolutely nothing, dirt? I'm like, what happened to like all the cool gods, like Poseidon, like,
Right?
Isis? Like, we were a better, we were,
Hercules.
exactly. Or what about like, like coming to find religion? Um, but I'm like, why just enough? Like, we have proven time and time again, especially in this reality, that no matter where you go, no matter how abandoned, no matter how empty, no matter how much of a void, you will always find life and something there thriving. So what makes you think that your afterlife would be any different than your life? If anything, whenever we drill down, we discover things are much more. And when you die, everything that this wonderful life is, as big and as rich and as sloppy and messy as it is going to be like one tiny footnote in a much larger book that you are reading and writing. I tell people, like, I have clear
Yeah.
memories of my 5-year-old self, but I didn't have to kill that 5-year-old in order to become 6. And the 7-year-old didn't have to
Right.
die at the hands of the 8-year-old. We carry it all
Right.
with us. And each of those years were very intense and very specific. But if I told you now that I want you to use words that are only words that you learned in like ninth grade, you have no idea because they all like
Oh
kind of
no.
together, right? But when you
Right.
die, this life is like your 83rd year old self, and it just becomes part of the next version of you, which is so much bigger that everything in this world just like shrank down before my very eyes to the size of a pea in a pod.
Wow.
And I was like, this is just incredible. And even more so, like, why do we get so upset with each other when we're on a pea in a pod? Like, why can't we just say, brother, sister, knock yourself out? May
Yeah.
your gods look kindly upon you. May you always have,
Yes.
your favorite foods. May you always have a full fridge. May you have a roof over your head and warm blankets. And
Kindness
and
matters.
yeah, and just be kind, be nice. It's so easy to be nice, and if you can't be nice, just ignore them. Ignore them. I always tell
Yeah.
people, you don't like me, just
Yeah.
ignore me. I'll go away. You know.
No, I think that perspective of coming from a place of you've been there and it's changed you so dramatically.
Oh yeah. Well, a lot of people fear death with good
Mhm.
reason. We're kind of like, when we're little, we do nothing but try to kill ourselves. Like, watch me jump off the roof. And as we get older, we buy houses that have only got one step because you're like, it'll be easier for the ambulance crew. you know.
Yes.
But death is we fear it, I think, because we see it as a thing that happens. It's an event, right? I'm living. Uh-oh, death is imminent. There's some kind of paperwork protocol thing I've got to go through. This is the death
Mhm.
card.
Mhm.
I'm either going to be judged or it's going to hurt or whatever. And then there's after death, right? Which is either heaven or hell or nothing or what you believe. And in my own perspective, in my own experience, similar to a very old episode of The Twilight Zone, death is like breathing in and out. It's like walking from one room that's playing like Mexican music to the next one where they're playing soft rock, and you just keep on doing your thing. And you, at some point, you're like, wait a minute, is that the captain and Tennille? and
Wow.
you notice that the radio has changed, the station has changed, but nothing else seems to have. That is death. You will be told that you have died. You will not experience death. It cannot be experienced because it is a change in focus. It's like
Wow.
it's like
It's profound.
it's just one of those things that you discover. You breathe in as one person alive, and you breathe out as the same
Mhm.
person, but no longer alive. It's a shift in focus. If you could see distance,
Mhm.
so I from my desk, but 5 hours later, you know, and but if my vision was good enough, I could see to England, right? I could see the top. Have great vision, but like I could see. Does that mean I see the future? No, but it's sort of because far enough away, and you can make that part of your present because you see it. Then your present
Mm.
gets bigger, and that's what death is like. Your vision shifts to see more, and your present becomes larger, and that's why it's
That's
so
beautiful.
positive, because you sense, there are times we all have this moment that's like, I've heard it described as inner vibrational touch, where you have like one of those great moments where you suddenly like love everything, and you're like, oh my God, I love my life, I love this tree, I love these little animals, I love my wife, I love my, and you just, you get this blush of just like, oh my God, yes, 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 this. And it never lasts very long. But that feeling is very similar to the feeling of dying, because you suddenly take it all in, and you don't have you're not fraught with the same fears and the same anxieties, and you just take it all in, and you're like, oh my
Wow.
god, it's all just so incredibly beautiful. Why didn't we appreciate it more?
Right.
And it's like,
Yeah,
well,
I think that's
make
what
an
it's
effort to
about.
appreciate it, all of it, the good, the bad, the ugly, whatever, because this is a playground. This is it.
Well, it's
But
like,
it's not the only playground. It's just one.
that's incredible. I love that. That was really beautiful. When that happened, what was the first thing that you wrote afterwards? Do you remember?
I think back then I was writing. That was back when I was writing a. I used to do an article series for our gay newspaper in Maine called The Straight and Narrow, and it was like a
I
funny.
love it.
It was like a funny article that I did um, every month, and so it was probably one of the pieces I wrote for The Straight and Narrow at the time, but I finally, when I published my mom's books, I got all my old straight and narrows together, and I published a book called Tales of an American Lesbian, which is a compilation of all the earlier straight and narrows that we edited out and put into a package. But so it was probably something like that I did.
Love it.
Those were times when when I was a kid, if you were gay or lesbian, you didn't tell a soul. I mean, certainly not in farm country. You would have been killed.
I grew up in Michigan.
Yeah, same
I
thing.
never told a soul I was
Yeah,
bisexual.
and
I
never
I wasn't
volunteered to
even
go out
certain what it
hunting with
was.
anyone. Yeah. So,
I wasn't even certain what it was. All I
yeah.
knew is that the lesbians were really catching some shit, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
didn't want any part of it. So what was I? Yeah, I
Yeah.
get that.
I think the interesting part is later on I learned that all my friends in school, all of them, were all gay or lesbian. Later on, like I didn't know at the time, they didn't know at the time, nobody told each other. But later on, I'm like, really? And I'm going down the list and I'm like, they were all queer. Like if we'd only known, it would have been so much easier to get
Mhm.
by.
Right?
But those were very different times. And you know, uh it's I mean, it makes this particular current dreadful timeline that we're all stuck in history even more tragic, which is why I got my Canadian citizenship. But
Mm.
yeah, again, it's like there's just so very little reason, to worry about my sexual preference or my orientation, because unless you're married to me, it's really not your problem.
Yeah, right? I guess that's the part I just don't get. It's
Yeah,
like, what weird thing do you have going on in your head that makes you think you need to be in my bedroom? You
yeah,
need to
and
know.
like
I mean,
why?
it's a kinda creepy. It's
Yeah,
creepy.
yeah, I can count all my
Y'all are
relationships.
creepy.
Yeah, I can count all my relationships on one hand and have fingers left over to whistle. So it's not like, you know, like for the great majority of the world, I'm telling people I'm just a Pennsylvania farm girl. Uh, um, I like to bake bread. I love animals. I feed my birds. I grow some gardening stuff, and I draw. And I'm like,
Mhm.
it's just it's a very it's a very simple life, and it's one that I've
I
heavily
love it.
curated, because it wasn't always a simple life, and I've had some bad things happen to me in the past, and I said, now is a time for it's peace. I'm like, you have to carve out your own peace, you know?
Yes, yes, yes.
And we're
I think
surrounded
that's
at the moment anyway. We're at a time of so much, like anger and fear and hatred. And then I'm like, you know, you're just blowing away energy. It's like a car with a bad muffler. You're just
right.
you're,
Well, it's like taking time for life. Our whole time for life thing was, So and I wanted to do something that lifted others because and I'm also involved in politics and other things.
oh yeah.
But but to take time to smile. I started painting rocks
Yeah,
and I'm gonna put them out, things like that. We're doing bloom scrolling, which is just ridiculously fun, to
yeah.
see what flowers people are gonna come up with and through this. Our brain
You're breaking up a little bit.
is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, yeah. I think that you're not going to regret. I never regret taking time off, but it was hard
Mhm.
to do. I mean, I was raised in a
Right.
household that was, farm work is 24/7, 365,
Yeah, my
and
grandma had a farm. It's all the time.
it's nonstop. And my dad was a bit of a psychopathic wingnut, and he had a very strong work ethic for us, mind you. I said it was kind of a note that I made, that on our farm there were no outdoor chairs. It was like, you should not be sitting ever. You should be standing and working, because there's work to be done. And so this sense of like, you have to work, work, work constantly was it was just
Yes.
omnipresent. And
Mhm.
and I'm like, at some point I was in my 20s, and I was like, I'm all for joyous work, but I'm not for pointless work. I'm not for punitive work. I'm not for, my
Mhm.
dad was big on, like, you see this cubic ton of bricks, move it 6 feet over there. Like it was kind of like a forced labor camp, like I said, it's like an episode of Black
Mhm.
Mirror. And you'd move them, or you'd stack like 1,000 hay bales in the barn. And then he would come in and like El Patron and put his hand between the bales and say, these are too close together. The barn will catch on fire. So it's like, you have to
Oh.
unstack all these bales and restack them, you know. And he was just a miserable, unhappy person. And took it out on us. And so I said, as I got older, I'm like, the when you die, you're not going to get points for, like, yes, I dug the deepest trench and I dig ditches for a living. Like, I'm not saying you should avoid work. It's one of the reasons why I don't like AI. I'm like,
Mhm.
work is good. It's wonderful. Like, I love baking bread. Why do I like it? It's relaxing. It's delicious. It's fun, and it's a good skill to have. Plus, it's easy. And plus, I don't have to buy bread because I can just make it. But it's like, why not? Yeah, be productive. Be productive and be
Yeah.
happy, but don't be a slave, and don't be a slave driver.
Yeah, back to
It's as
just be
simple enough.
kind.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
where
Just be
so
nice.
we're coming up on the hour. You are just fascinating. I could go all day listening to your stories because it's amazing to me. And I am so interested in life after death. I find that I just watched um Dragonfly, the
Uh huh.
movie Dragonfly.
Yep.
It's one of my favorites. Um and I often wonder because I'm an empath and I feel like there's more out there.
Oh,
And so I'm fascinated by that and I appreciate you
you don't even
sharing
have
your
to say there's
story.
more out there. You can just say there's less in here, right? Because
Yeah, yeah,
the amount that
yes,
is
there's lesson.
more is out there is like so vast and so big that
It's
this
amazing.
is this is the less. This is pretty rich. I mean, this is a pretty, interesting planet with loads of cool stuff on it.
It
Um,
is.
but it's just such a tiny, tiny, teeny, tiny piece of what's going on out there. So
Where can everyone find your books?
you can go to hollyvalero.com. You can find them at Amazon. They're in print, and the animated, I gently animated the ones for Wander, so that you can tap the glyphs on the pages and get like little tooltip definitions. And that's at Apple Books for the iPad. So
I love that.
hollyvalero.com. My publishing company is boilerplatebooks.com, but you can get there if you can spell Valero and you put in Holly Valero. I think I'm the only one in the United States at the moment, so you will get to me one way or the other.
Not to be confused with Holly Gennaro Bolero.
No, no, no. There's so few Hollies out there. It's amazing.
I love the
That and
name.
Holly Hunter. Yeah.
There
Yeah.
you go. Well, thank you, and thank everybody for being here. I would like to bring you back sometime because
Oh, sure.
I love what you're doing. I love what you're doing. I love your
Cool.
art.
Oh,
All
sweet.
right.
Thanks.
If you want to
Thank you so
stick
much.
on for a minute, thank you. And bye
All right.
everybody.
See ya.